Hey, this is Andrew Brown. In this video, what I want to do is go ahead and utilize Elastic Beanstalk programmatically. So we're going to focus on utilizing the CLI. And I've actually done this before. So in the original developer associate, I had done these labs and we had gone through and deployed in the various methods for deployment. And so I want to do that again, but the UI has changed, the CLI has changed, and so we have to work our way through it in a different way. So I pulled up the old repo where we have the AWS Developer Associate, and so we have an application here that we can utilize. And so this one is using Express, and so I believe that this should work. So what I'm going to do is carry it over into our AWS examples repo. I'm going to open this up in Gitpod as I want to make sure this application is running. I think when I did this course last time, I did Cloud9, but you can utilize whatever you want. But there will be slightly different challenges. But what I want to do is just bring this app over and make sure that it still works. And if it still works, then we're going to be in good shape. So in here, there should be a folder for Elastic Beanstalk. So I'm just looking for that. Maybe I called it EB. There it is. And we have basics. So this one will be new folder we'll call advanced. We're going to do some more advanced things in here. And what I want to do is get this app going. So what I'm going to do is create a new folder in here. I'm going to call this app. And we'll just bring these files one over at a time. So we'll bring over the package.json, since that will be the first thing. Is that a file or a folder? That does not look like a folder. I'm going to delete that. It looks like a file folder app. And so we'll bring over package.json. There is a command that we could run to create this from scratch, but I'd rather just bring these files over. I think that's easy enough. So we have our app.js. We'll go get our index.js file. So we'll grab this next. So say index.js. We'll paste that on in here. So this is the backend, so you can see very clearly what that is. And this was the index.js, so yeah, that makes sense. And then we have our app.js. So we'll copy that over. So we'll say file new app.js. I'll paste that in here. This looks like we are using Mithril. So Mithril is my favorite JavaScript framework. It is still one of the fastest ones out there. It's very easy to utilize, and it's just very minimal. We could use React, but I just don't feel like doing that, and I really do like this because it's so straightforward. Anyway, we'll go back over to here, and I want to grab our styling, because it'd be nice if we had some styling here. So we'll say style CSS. We'll paste that in. And the other thing I'm going to want here is our index.html file. Great. So let's take a look at what we have here. So in the index.html file, we're loading this, the CSS style sheet. We're loading a Mithril from Cloudflare. I imagine this probably is still here. I'm just going to double check and see if that is still available. It is. Excellent. There could be a newer version of Mithril.js. I'm going to go ahead and take a look here. It doesn't really matter if we use a newer one. I don't feel like it changes that much. So we have 2.2.3, so that is the latest version, and this is 2.0.4. I don't think there'd be a huge distinction between those two, so I'm going to leave that alone. But we're loading those two in place. So that's the index.html file. Over here, we have the actual server itself. And so what this is doing is it's just saying if we're at the root directory, load the index.html file. If we're at the CSS directory, load this one. If it's the JavaScript file, load that in there. And then we are listening on 0000, which is something that we absolutely have to do. And so that is pretty straightforward there. So what I'm going to do is cd into our directory, the EB advanced directory here. And cd in again, I'm going to do npm install. So that's going to go ahead and install that there. And now I want to make sure this app is working. So usually you just do npm start. The way you know is if you open up package.json, it will tell you where the main is, and then there will be a start script. So if we type in npm start, that should start up Express.js. So it's planning to use port undefined, listening on port undefined. So there's no port defined. If we go back over to our script, maybe we have to set it. So notice it says process env port. So what we could do here is set a port. So I'm going to go ahead and just make a new README file here. And I don't really use JavaScript as my primary language for backends, but I'm pretty comfortable figuring it out. So we'll just say port. Is that what we set it as? Or index.js? It is looking for, a port environment variable. And so I could put something like 4567, and then we say npm start Okay, so install deps. So this would be, again, if you're not familiar with Node, say start server. And so we have npm start. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this here. And we'll paste this in here and hit enter. And so now we're started on port 4567. I'm going to make this public. And I want to go take a look at this here. So I'll open this up. And so here is our application. As you can see, we can click through here. There is some data, but nothing crazy is happening here. I'm going to just inspect this. I don't expect this to work because there's nothing real occurring here. We'll go ahead and look at our network, give this a refresh. And yeah, notice we're getting a 404 when we put it here on ready state caught. So I just want to go take a look here. Maybe it's not supposed to work. It might not matter. But if we look at our code here, we have our API endpoint. So this is supposed to go somewhere. And I think when I originally made this, we actually backed it by a database. And so that's the reason why this isn't working, because this is supposed to actually get data from somewhere, but we don't actually have any data. I want to go look at our application itself. And we don't have any endpoints to grab data either. So I think probably what I would have done with this is, I mean, we could actually code in an endpoint if we really wanted to, I suppose. But yeah, let me think about this for a second. And so I looked, and you know what? I don't think we actually ever hooked this up to anything in the previous videos. Maybe I probably used it in another lab and used like API Gateway as the backend to talk to a database like DynamoDB. But I think that it would be advantageous for us to hook this up to an RDS database because that would be the most practical use case that you'd be using Elastic Beanstalk with, some relational database. So for that to work, I think what we'll need to do is stage ourselves an RDS database locally. So I definitely have done this before. Have we done this in any of the AWS content? I'm not sure. I'm going to go down here and see if we have anything there. But I'm pretty sure I have some kind of project where I have an RDS database. So what I'm going to do, let's go over to GitHub. I'm just trying to think of where I might have done this before. I might have this in a private repo like, let's just say Bootcamp. Because we did the backend Bootcamp. And I'm sure this is in other open repos. But in my Docker file here, I know we have a configuration, or we use Docker Compose. We had a configuration for the database. So let me go find that. I know I have it somewhere. Just give me a moment to find it, okay? I think I found it. I think Bako put it in the Docker YAML file here, so I'll open this up. And so here is what we need if we want to provision Postgres, okay? So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to make a new file, and I'm going to put it in the advanced folder. I'm going to call this Docker Compose. YAML. We'll go ahead and paste this. And so the idea is this will get a Postgres server running that we can authenticate to. I'm going to go down to our README file if I can find it in here. We made one, right? Yeah, it's right here. Good. Did I place this in the app? I'm going to lift this one up because I want it actually in the advanced directory, if that's okay with everybody here. And so if we want to run Postgres server, it should be Docker Compose up. Not us, but up. And so that should start that server. So I'll just make a new tab over here on the right-hand side. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm CD'd into the correct directory, so EB advance. And we'll go ahead and paste in Docker Compose up, and hopefully it will detect that file. I think it will in either case. And so now it's going to pull the image and start up an RDS database, or Postgres database. RDS is the AWS service. So what I want to do is create an endpoint here that can interact with that. So I don't really use Postgres much with Express, but I'm sure I can figure it out. So Postgres Node.js driver. And yeah, I guess it's just PG, so that's pretty easy. So what I'll do is go back over to our package here. And I mean, we could specify a very specific version. I'm going to stop our server here. I'm going to do npm install pg save. I mean, this is something we need to run the server. So there's a difference between dependencies and dev dependencies. So dev dependencies means that it's only around for development, but that's actually not true. I think it would actually be, let's go look it up. I always forget. Versus dev dependencies. Are crucial packages required for your application to run in production? At the same time, devs are tools that aid in the production but are not needed in production. So this is actually wrong, and it really should be in dependencies. That's what I thought. And so I'll just move that over here. We aren't even utilizing the latest version of Express. Let's go take a look and see what the latest version is here. Just because if we're using the Postgres gem, we might run into issues if we're not using the latest. So this one, 5 is in beta, so 419.2. I mean, it's not that old, and probably would utilize something newer. If we go over here and take a look here at our versioning, it should tell us what version we're using here. I can just type in Express. Oh, so we are on the latest stable version, so that actually is fine. But I want to go ahead and save the Postgres gem in here, so we'll do that. And we have a issue here. I just am missing this. There we go. We'll try this again. And so that will install Postgres, and it's installing that particular version, which is fine. So I now need an endpoint that we will talk to. And so I'm going to call this one, because we might want two. We might want to, sorry for the cough. We might want to have two here, but I'm going to have one called submit. And this one's going to be a post request. And the idea is that we want to send a post here. We'll go over to our code in our app.js, and in here we have an endpoint. This is just regular JavaScript, by the way. And so we need to have this endpoint here. So I'm just going to put a new variable here called const equals const URL. And for now, this will be localhost. That doesn't really make sense because it would actually need whatever the endpoint is up here. So what we'll have to do is just copy this multiple times. It's kind of annoying, but I'll just put URL base here like that. And then we'll just put path like that. And so then this will be whatever it is. So this will be submit. And it doesn't like the console. I'll just make these vars instead. Maybe it wants semicolons on the end. Why is it complaining? Oh, you know, it's because we're in this. That doesn't make any sense. We can't, that structure did not make sense. But we can make these const because const is supported now. So I think when I did this, const was not something you would generally do. And so in here, what I want to do is say URL base plus URL path. Now remember that this thing is hard-coded, so we might have to, again, swap it out before we do our real deploy or something, or we'll have to have a strategy for inserting that. The other thing that we could do is we could just have /submit, because I think that if you do that, it would actually just use the local domain. So I'm actually just curious what would happen if we do that. So I'm actually going to take that out for a moment and leave that blank. And so I think that it actually still might work this way. So the only thing is that this is doing a put. We could change this to put. It doesn't really matter. So we'll change this to a put. And then we have our params. I want to see what that data looks like. So that would be in the request. And so then we can kind of see what's going on here. So what I'll do is go back and run this again. All right. And we'll go back over to here. We'll give this a hard refresh. And you might be asking, Andrew, why are we learning how to do development? Because if you're going to work in the cloud, you're going to have to know how to code something. So just understand that this is for your benefit to learn how to do basic endpoints and hook up databases, as this is just an absolute requirement. There's no way around it. So I'm going to click this, hit submit. We have it put to a 404. We can see where it's going. So if we go to headers, it is going to where we want it to go, but it's not saying / whatever, and it's making a query string, which is not exactly what I want. So that makes me think that this M request is not being utilized correctly, even though it appears to be correct. So what we'll do is go over to Mithril here. We'll just say Mithril.js request. That's a very simple library, so it shouldn't be too hard to figure out. And so here we have an example of a URL or a method, and we have params here and then body. So maybe it needs to go in the body as opposed to params, as param seems to be placing that in the query string. The other thing here is we're not getting submit, so I'm just going to go ahead and just hard code it like this, submit. And maybe that will resolve our issue here, so let's go ahead and try that. I'm going to stop this and start it again. We might not need to do that, but I'm just kind of covering our bases here, and we'll go ahead and submit this again. Now it's going to /submit. We're going to look at the payload, and it's in the body, so that is now correct. The question is, did it make it to our backend application? Notice that it is printing out the contents of it here, so that is good. So what I want here is just the body. So I'll go look it up. We'll say get put body, get JSON body from what are we using? It's called Express.js. Why don't I use ChatGPT? Because I'm getting tired of it giving me wrong responses, okay? But we might go over there still. So yeah, status code would be a good idea to grab. I mean, we might want to take a look at that. So if we go here, we'll get the status code. I like that idea. So console log. But I mean, like, it should be the request, not the response, right? That doesn't make any sense. Why would they do response and not request? Anyway, it's just request.body, so we'll go ahead and do this, I suppose. Request console log request body. And so maybe we'll just take a look at what that actually looks like, and then we'll make a determination if we like that or not. So we'll restart that. We'll give this a refresh. I'm going to go ahead and submit this. We'll go back over to here, and I'm getting nothing. Nothing is being defined here. So I'm going to go back over to here, and I mean, we do need to use JSON, so I'd be curious if we go ahead and see if we place this in. This is probably some kind of way to say just like what to handle for the response and things like that. So I'll go back here. I'm going to stop this again. We'll try this again. As I would expect there to be a body, we definitely passed a body along. So give a refresh here. We'll go hit submit. Another thing I'll check the request here is what it's sending as. So I believe that it's sending as an application JSON because I see accept here. And it says it here, content type as well. So that is ruled out. And we can see our payload is being shown in something that looks like JSON here. And now it's working. So I guess we needed that for it to interpret the JSON. I'm not sure why it just wouldn't output the raw body. But again, Express.js is not my favorite framework to utilize here. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and see if we can implement the PG Postgres for Express. Or we'll just say Node.js here. So we'll go over to here, and we can see that we would need to first import it. So we'll go over to here, and we're using the older style here, so I'll just convert this over to this. Or it's not necessarily old, it's just the style that we're using. So we'll go ahead and say require PG or constant PG. We would have to create a client. And I'm just trying to think here, like, would we create the client on the outside or within it? Usually, like, when you spin up your server, you create one client, and then it would have to handle a bunch of connections. So I think that's fine. Here we would query data. So first, what I'd like to do is actually create a table for our database. So if we go over to README here, there should be a way to establish a connection. Let me go figure that out. Just give me a second. Yeah, what I'm thinking about is the fact that we don't necessarily have a Postgres client installed on here. And so I feel like if we want to do that, we're going to need a Postgres client. I'm going to go down to our RDS section. I wonder if we installed one here. If we go to README here, it doesn't show an example, which is frustrating. But I'm pretty sure we don't have one. So if we go to like another tab here, just type in PSQL. Yeah, we don't have a Postgres client. So I'm just going to say Debian install Postgres client. We might actually be on Ubuntu. I just kind of forget. But it shouldn't be too hard. I don't want everything. I just want the client. May contain many packages and third parties, because that's really what I want is just the client, but the most common package is here. I guess we'll just install it. Say install Postgres client. Every time I try to figure out how to install just the client, I never figure it out. Ever, for years. Okay, and so now let's type in PSQL. And we now have a command for PSQL. I remember that it's a bit tricky to connect when you're in Gitpod. So I think it is, I mean, this is any cloud developer environment, but if we do this, because this is local host, well, sorry, the server is called, the user is, what, Postgres? If we go over here, I'm going to go look at its configuration. This is, username is Postgres. So I think we do a capital U on that. And I don't think this will just work as is, because if we do this, I remember like it's an issue with the port or binding or something like that. So we'll copy this, enter. Yeah, and so what I'll do is I'll try to put the host and we'll say 0000. Maybe that'll do it. There we go. And so now it is password. And so we'll do host 0000 here. The connection at the URL is not working. Another thing we could try to do is we try to do it like this. We can say Postgres colon password @ sign, and this would be 5432, because this is a connection string URL, and usually those are easy to work with, I find. And I think that would work. Let's give this a try instead. I mean, it's running. Role Postgres does not exist. So it's telling us that the role doesn't exist yet. Well, how does it not work if we set up these here? Database is ready for accepting connections. Password authentication failed with user Postgres. But it's right here. We'll try this again. We'll try this again. One thing, I think this one actually didn't work because I didn't put the protocol in front of it. So I usually do PostgreSQL or something like that. PSQL connection string. We'll just look that up quickly. And I just want the front part. This is what I want. There we go. So we'll go back over to here. And we'll give this a try. Sometimes there's like a separate like database command for connecting to the database here. I did not mean to close that there. Opening that port on 5432. And I'm going to go ahead and paste this in again. And it's fine if we're not connecting, as long as we're getting something that's telling us we're not connecting. That's what I want to see. So I'll try this again. Is it working? Just going to scroll up here a bit and hit enter. So yeah, there is some kind of trick to this. Just give me a minute to figure it out, okay? Also, by the way, as I'm looking up how we can establish our connection, I went to our bootcamp for 2023. And it looks like we can just install the client. I guess I forgot that this was an option. But anyway, I'm just going to continue on here. I'll be back here when I find a solution, okay? All right, so in our previous bootcamp, we had like week 4. I was trying to find the week which it was. And so I think in here, this will probably resolve our issue. So I'm just going to put a link here just in case you ever want to read through all this and know more about or have more options for this stuff. But yeah, we have our common commands, which is fine. And we just connected that way. We used localhost. Oh, here it is, create DB. So that's the first line that we need to run. Okay, so let's go back over to here. I knew there was something. So say create initial database. And this database is going to be called StudySync. We'll go ahead and copy this here. 000 and localhost are basically the same thing, so it doesn't really matter what we... I got to stop killing our server here. It's basically the same thing, so it doesn't really matter, but we'll use localhost if it is working. That is fine. And here it's asking for the password, so password is password, enter. And so now it's probably created that database. And so maybe we can establish our connection here. So I'm going to go / here. I'm going to say StudySync. I'm going to just change this to localhost. And maybe that will be our way that we can get to this database here. So copy this. And go here, hit enter. And it says it does not work. I don't think we're supposed to have a triple / there. That kind of looks wrong. Maybe that was our issue before. Maybe our connection, there we go. So that might have worked before if we took out the triple / and double, because you can connect to the root of it and then create your database. But now we have that. And so the next thing I will want to do is create a table. So we'll just say create a Postgres table. And I might have, again, code over here. So I'm going to go back to what we just had open here, wherever that was. And what I'm looking for here is, yeah, an example of a table. So we're not going to stick with exactly what's here. Say create table. But the purpose of this app is that it's like you're studying and you just store your score, right? So we'll just say like answers. And yeah, the UUID is fine. So I'm just going to go back and take a look at this app for a second that we have, wherever it is. And so, yeah, we make a choice and we go next, right? So if we go over to our app.js here, we have example data. So I think the thing is that normally you'd want to have some data here. So I'm going to go over here and we'll just ask ChatGPT. And we'll say, give us 20 simple AWS multiple choice questions. Make sure there are 4 choices each. And I want this to be really, really, really simple. Provide us a, we'll say create a table for Postgres to store the data, make, create a table, Postgres to store the table with SQL, as well as inserting the data. Call the table questions. Okay, so we'll do that. And I'm not sure why it's printing out the answers. This thing is so dumb. You know what I mean? I'm going to try this again. We'll say simple. Make sure there are 4 choices. So create us 20 simple AWS multiple choice questions, and make sure there are 4 choices each. The questions should be for each. Okay, we'll just say don't write out the questions here. Just write the SQL for final insert, for final script. Okay, hopefully it understands what I'm trying to say, but like I don't want it to tell me each thing. Just give me the thing. Here we go. There we are. And so we'll just give that a moment to generate. All right, there we go. Now I'm not saying that any of these are actually any good. I definitely would not recommend this as a means for studying because I'm going to tell you that ChatGPT and these things are not good at generating out accurate questions. But, you know, you do whatever you want. So I'm going to go down here and we'll say this new table here. And we can use an incrementing ID. I kind of prefer if we used a user ID, to be honest, or the, well, this one says serial primary key. I thought we were using a UUID here, did we not, in the other one? I guess it doesn't really matter. We could use a primary key ID. That's totally fine. ID serial primary key. Well, hold on here. Yeah, this one uses a UUID for the answers. Yeah, I'm going to actually use a UUID, sorry, because UUIDs are really useful because they're basically more random. I mean, again, it depends on your use case, but like imagine that you are building an exam platform like us. We would use UUIDs because we wouldn't want people to be able to type in the number and figure out exactly how many questions we have and things like that. So that's why we would do that. So here are our options. This looks totally fine. Yeah, it's inserting all the stuff. Text is fine as a format. So we have this. Now the other thing we need is to store the answers. So we're going to assume that there's only one user and there's not multiples. And so what I'll want to do here is I'll want to have, here it'll be question UUID, and it will say UUID here. So that will be for the question that we're utilizing here. And then we'll say the option. This is char 1. What is that supposed to be? A, B, or C, or D? Okay, so we'll just say choice, which will be char 1. That'll be not null. I mean, really, they all should not be not null. So this should be not null. This should be not null. And And yeah, we do want a timestamp of when it's created. That makes sense. So the other thing is like, is it correct? Because we wouldn't know if it's correct unless we counted them all up. So we can go here and say, I'm just trying to decide here. I don't know. We'll leave it blank for now. So this is our data that I think we'll want to create. I'm just going to go ahead and do this. And I think this will work. So we'll go ahead into, or we're already in Postgres here. So establish your connection. And then what we do is we'll grab each part. We'll copy this. We could also import it as a script and run it in one go, which might be nicer. But say copy and hit enter. And it says, no function matches the given name for argument types. You might need to add explicit typecast. That's because for this UUID feature, we actually have to turn it on. I don't think it's on by default. So if we go back over to wherever our bootcamp was, it's these two lines here. And so when you're using Postgres on AWS, there are some extensions that are available, some are not. This one is available, so we're not going to run into any trouble if we have this. It still would be a really good idea if we made this a script. I'm kind of leaning towards that, so I'm going to go ahead and just call this seed.sql. And this will set up our, or we'll just call it schema. Well, it does both. It seeds the data and it's the schema. Sometimes you keep those separate. So actually what I'll do is I'll make two files. One's called schema. And I'll make one like that. I'll also make a folder here. We'll call this one it was a file. I'll make a new folder here called SQL. And so we'll grab these two here and we'll drag this over into the SQL folder. Don't worry, we'll do Elastic Beanstalk at some point here. We'll get there. And I'm going to go back over to our README here. And were we not? Oh, we didn't even save it yet. That's why we're not seeing it here. I'm just going to save that so I don't lose it. I'm going to close this one out, this one out, this one out. I just want to be able to see what I'm doing here. Close all. There we go. And if I could just zoom out a bit, it's just really hard to see what I'm doing. I want the schema one. So bring this here. And we'll cut this. And so this is our schema. Answers and questions. I'm also going to put this one in public. By default, it will already go in the public schema, but I'll just set that explicitly. And then we'll go here. And we will cut this out. And we will paste it in here. I'll go back to my README. And it looks like we've been inserting this into the basic one in the wrong project. So that's not good. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut this out here. I apologize. I've been doing this wrong the entire time. So we'll cut this out and we will go and put this back in our advanced README here. There we go. And I'm almost tempted that we should install the specific client, which is really silly that I did it this way and didn't take 2 seconds to check. But if you do want to install it the other way, you absolutely could by grabbing the other line, which I can't seem to find. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and grab this here, as that will be our import for here. So this will be create schema, import data. This is called study sync. And then this one's study sync here. All right. So we'll go ahead and just type in clear here. Oh, sorry. I'm going to just type exit out of this, or sorry, \Q. And we'll just return our screen back to the normal size if we can here. There we go. So now what we should be able to do is just take this line. It'll probably ask us for our password, which is totally fine. We'll go ahead and hit enter. And if this was in DB, this was SQL. I'll just change this over to SQL. SQL DB, whatever you want to have it called. It just depends on your project. We'll go ahead and paste that in. There we go. I'm in the wrong directory, so we'll go EB, CD EB, advanced, clear, and we'll try to run this again. So let's say password, and oh, it creates it twice. So I'll take out that top line. Maybe I was just showing an example of both and the other one, that's why. We'll go ahead and hit enter. I'll type in password. And so now we should have data, except there is an issue in our seed data. What does the A in Amazon stand for? I'm gonna have to go back here and just say like, hey, your Your SQL has... Wait, why would that be an issue? Let me go back here and take a look again. So it says, what does the A in Amazon stand for? I'll just tell it that there's an error and it'll go fix it. This is why ChatGPT is not very smart. So I'm hoping that what we'll do is go back and figure out the single quotations or issues here. We'll just give it a moment to generate out. All right, so we have this data here. We'll go over and copy this. We'll go back over to our seed data. We'll paste this in here. We'll save it. We'll go down below and we will try this again. So I'm going to go ahead and import this. We'll hit enter. We'll type in password. And now it's inserted those 20 rows. If we really want to be sure that it's there, what we can do is just verify the data. So verify data. And so what we'll do is log in. It did not copy it. I hate copy and paste in cloud developer environments, browsers. We'll go ahead and do that. And so down below, what I'll want to do here is just write a query. So let's say select, just say SQL here, SQL. Select all from questions. Actually, that's all we need to do here. So we'll go ahead and establish this connection. Paste this in. I'm going to go ahead and copy this. Enter. And so you can see our data. If you want to see this in another view, we could say X on. And we'll try this again. Put a semicolon on the end here. And so we can see that our data is inserted. So we are in good shape. Notice that it's using the title case or uppercase character. That's good to know. I did not know that it would be that. That's kind of frustrating that it's not just lowercase. But that's totally fine. We'll just work that into our script. So now that we have our data, what we'll do is go back over to app.js. And in here, what I want to do is create a endpoint for getting data initially, because we want to populate it here. So what I'll do, I'm just thinking about this for a moment, is I'm just trying to think about this, like where I would put this. I don't usually write Mythor.js from scratch. I actually have a framework on top of it. So I'm going to go here and take a look here because we want to get some data initially. I'm just trying to decide whether it's okay to do that on the outside or not. So I'm just thinking about that here. Let's go take a look at requests again here. So say mRequest mithril. I mean, I don't think there's any reason we can't do that, but I just want to see an example. So yeah, they have this on initialize. So they say on init data to do's fetch, and then they have this separate function for doing that. So maybe we'll follow what they're doing here. So I'll go over to here, and technically we do have a data structure up there, which is great. But I'm going to change this a bit. So we have data, we'll say data. And then in here we'll have questions. Oh, sorry, questions. List. That'll be a list. And then we'll have fetch. And this will actually get our data. All right, so that means I'll take this one out of here because we don't actually have any data as of yet. And then we need our fetch function. So I'm going to copy this one, as we probably can utilize something very similar here. And we'll paste this in. That was not a paste. We'll try that again. It's not me. I'm telling you, it's the cloud developer environment. It's such a pain to copy paste. And we'll go ahead here. Personally, I would love to just use MacVim, but like I think that a lot of people watching would not be able to follow along, so that's why I don't utilize it. And I'm just looking at the example here. So they have function. Yeah, it's exactly like how we want to have ours. I don't think we're supposed to have a comma here, so I'll take that out. I'm just going to make sure that these are balanced correctly. And so this is going to be a get. And this will be questions. And we don't need any body here. So go ahead and do this. And I'm just going to indent back here. Probably the same issues up here. It's not a real problem, but I'm just going to do that anyway. And so that is how we're going to fetch our questions. I'm going to go back over to here. I just want to see how they did that. So they just did that like this. And we'll paste this in as such. And we'll say questions. Oh, sorry. Whoops. Questions. And I'll just leave that as data because that's what it is. Then down below, they have this on init to fetch it. So in our app here, I'm just going to go ahead and do this. This will be questions fetch. And so the idea is that initially it should fetch that when this loads, and we'll run that there. So now we'll go back over to index.js, and we will make our other function here. I'm just going to go ahead and grab this one here, and we'll say get, and this will be questions. And I'm just going to return this. I think we can do that. I think by default it will return JavaScript, but we'll have to find out that in a moment. So that looks fine. We'll go back over to, where are we going back to? Over to here. And assuming that this is still running, I'm going to just restart the application just in case we need to do that. So I'm going to hit Q here to get out of that and just do \Q to get out of Postgres. We'll go back over to where the app is running, which is here. I'm going to stop it, restart it. And it has an issue. Await is only for async functions. So it's possible that we added something in here and it's upset about it. What if I just take this out of here? Will that fix it? And it's still complaining. I mean, we did not change much here. The only thing we did was we required this. Oh, we created the client here. That's probably the problem. So await is only valid in async functions at the top level of body of modules. I really hate JavaScript. Okay, so what I'm going to do, because I do not feel like figuring this out, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this and paste it in ChatGPT. And if it can solve my JavaScript for me, it's like the one thing that it probably can do. That will make my life easier. It's funny because I do have a JavaScript course, and I'm sure I know how to solve that there at the time when I wrote that, but I'm not going to even try to figure this out. I just don't like doing it. So let's find out if it gives us a solution. Okay, it actually even went further and wrote us, it wrote us SQL. I mean, hey, or if this works, that's fine. I guess I'll go ahead and utilize it. But, you know, what is the best way? I don't know. Again, I'm not a Node.js expert. So I'm going to go ahead and bring over this code. So this one's already here, so we already have that. So I'll take this part out. We'll bring this on down. And we'll try this. So I'll copy this. And we'll paste this in here. And that's true, we would have to configure the database URL, so that makes sense. And then, you know, we might want to set the port. Was that already there? No. I actually don't mind if the port's not set. I'd rather just leave it alone. I guess we should probably have that there. It's probably right, now that I'm thinking about it. I shouldn't be so ridiculous here. But what we'll need to do is go back over to here. And we'll go ahead and grab this, because basically that is kind of what I wanted to do. I don't want to select all of the data like they're doing there. I think that's kind of a bit dirty, but we'll go ahead and paste this in as such. And now, is that going to cause us a problem? Are only allowed within functions that are async. Does that mean we have to turn that as an async function? This doesn't have async in front of it, but it has it over here. So we'll go over to here and put async there. Whoops. Actually, these other functions do have, well, not all of them, but this one does. So that should resolve that issue there. Did we declare it somewhere else? It's declared up here. So what I'll do, let's go up here and do that. That's all we had to do there. And so I'm thinking this actually just might work as is, and that'd be really nice. We'll go ahead and say npm start. And it has an issue finding the new client. Client is not defined. Oh, you know what? We are missing a line. We're missing this line here. We'll paste that in. We don't really need semicolons, but I'll just take them out. I'm not really using them. So we'll try this again. And we had a lot of output. I'm not sure if that's good or not. Still has an issue finding the client, I think. Failed to connect to the Postgres server. Well, you know what? We didn't provide it a URL. So what I'll do is I'll go back over to our README, because we need to start this in a particular way. If we go over here, we need our database URL. So say database URL. And luckily, we've already assembled it here. So we'll just grab this here. As such. And I think that has a space in between them. I don't like how this is not wrapping. It's kind of driving me crazy. So I'm going to turn word wrap on. There we go. And so now I'll just select that entire line. We'll copy it, we'll paste it, we'll hit enter. And so now this should start up with the database connection. It says, unable to connect to Postgres, database error, password authentication failed for user Gitpod. And so this is something that I remember experiencing before, but you know what it is? I think it's because this is supposed to say database and not that. So hold on here. Try this again. And so it's still saying that, making me think that it's not picking up the database environment variable. We do have it set here, so we'll go grab this again, copy, paste. Okay. Password authentication failed for user Gitpod. Keep saying that. And that, again, this is something that I was talking about where we had issues with trying to establish a connection because of this Gitpod thing. But it makes me think that it's not loading this here and it's just passing nothing along. So what I'm going to do is do console log here. And I'll just say database URL. And then we will output that because then we'll know if it's actually being passed along or not, right? So we'll do that. We'll stop this. We'll type in clear. We'll try this again. And so I'm going to scroll on up. And notice it's undefined. So maybe what we need to do is put double quotations around this. Sometimes this happens, like maybe the forward slashes is terminating it or something. So we'll go ahead and try this. And we'll paste it in again. And so now it's showing us the URL and it's actually established our connection. I don't want to leave this here because when we upload our application, I don't want to be outputting to the logs our connection string because that's not necessarily smart to do. But it's established a connection. We'll go back over to our application. We'll give this a refresh. And I want to see if it gets the actual data. And it does. So it is returning the data, which is nice. That's exactly what we want. I'm not sure why it says, oh, it says UUID then question. Why is it structured like that? Oh, no, that makes sense. If we go up here, we have data is not defined. That's because we changed the way our code works. So we'll go over to our index.js or even our app.js. And in here, there's something called data. It's right here, data. And so the problem is that our data structure is different from what this originally did. And so first what I want to do is just render out the questions. So if we look in our code here, we have an app, and then we have the data title, but that's for the current question. And so we have to have a way of setting what the current question is. So I'm going to go up here and just say question index, and we'll set this as 0 to indicate which question we're on. Though it seems like what we should do is actually show the last question that we're on that wasn't answered. And it would be really useful to set that. So I'm going to just make this null. And in here, what I'll do is I'll have questions, and then I'll have data questions question list equals data question index. Because that's really what we want to have here. So what we'll have to do is go back over to our application code here. And we'll need 2 queries. So we have this one here. We could actually probably do it in 1 query now that I think about it. I'm trying to think, how do we do multi-line in this? Is it just three? I think it's just 3 like this. That's how we do multi-line. See if that works. No. Multi-line JavaScript. I don't know, because we're using plain JavaScript, so I don't think I can do it that way. Which is fine. I can just write it all in line here. It's not that hard. But the idea is that we have our questions, but I want to get things other than just questions. So I'm going to say as questions here. And so the idea here is that will return that as, we'll need a couple JSON functions. So JSON functions, Postgres, because I want to have some returned as, like I want to have the ID, and then I want to have an array of JavaScript. So there are some JavaScript functions here that we can utilize. And so the idea here says JSON array element. Where are they here? Array to JSON. So returns the array as JSON. So we might be able to utilize this. Notice here as an example. So we'll go ahead and try this out. So what I'll do is I'll wrap this part like this, like that. And so I'm hoping that that will be returned as an array of records in JSON, okay? So I'll go back over to here to our application. We'll refresh, and we'll take a look at our data. And this is returning an array, but not an array of JSON. It's not what I want. Because I want to have two fields here. I want to have, because I only want one row. I'm going to go back here and say, I want to return, let's just say for the SQL, I want to return a JSON array of questions, and then I want to know, I want a question index returned of a question UUID that has not been answered by our answers table. Okay, now let's see if I can figure it out there. I can write this by hand. Again, it'd be nice if we just speeds this along here. So what's throwing me off is I can't do multi-line. And so I'm kind of thinking like, okay, if I can't do multi-line, do I have to do like a bunch of single strings? I really don't want to do that. I do not need that. I just need the SQL query, please. And that is total junk. This thing is not doing what I want it to do. So what I'll do, I really don't like doing it this way, but I'm going to go up here and I'll just look it up one more time. Multi-line string JavaScript, Node.js. Oh, it's backticks. It's backticks. Okay, so I was making that way harder than it had to be. All right, so we'll go ahead and put in backticks here. Can't expect me to remember everything. And so we'll go onto a new line here. And so we do want one of these from questions. And I'll want in here questions index. I'm just going to put something in here for now. It doesn't really matter as this. But I don't think we want to return rows because there's only going to be one row. So we'll look up Postgres, PG library, or so we'll say PG Node.js here. And it'll probably tell us in the documentation somewhere here. I'm not even going to bother asking dumb ChatGPT here. And this is what I was going to do. I was going to just do rows 0. Because if we're only having a single row, that's what would make sense to me here. So I'm going to go ahead and try this, rows 0. And I mean, the problem with this is it says select all from questions. But that's not exactly what I want. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say select all from true. And then we'll go from here and we'll say in our, here we'll say, this will say select all from questions. It's so small we can just do it like that. And that's going to get us really what we want. So I'll try this now and give this a refresh. You know what? We probably have to restart our server because it doesn't have hot reloading, and I'm not going to put that in there because I don't care. So I'll start this back up again, and we'll try this again. We'll hit refresh, and we get a 500 error, failed to retrieve questions. Is it going to tell us why? It does not tell us why. So if we're not confident whether our query is correct or not, what we can do is we can just copy it and run it manually till it works. So I'll go down here, and we'll go back and establish a connection. And I'm just going to put semicolon. And it says select from questions. It has a problem here. And it doesn't say as to why. Syntax error, select all from questions. Okay, what if I wrap this twice? Is that its problem? So we'll try this again here. So I'll put a semicolon on here. I don't want to have to, every time I copy and paste it. We don't need it when we do the query, but for here I'll do it. What if we just take the from out here and we just do select? I was thinking that we needed it in there for some reason, but maybe we don't. And I'll take this out. I'm usually really good at writing queries, I promise you that. I'll copy this again. Copy, paste, enter. Oh my goodness, just copy, paste correctly. Right click, copy, right click, paste, enter. Syntax error here. I know that I can do this. I absolutely know it. Maybe it's because it's not an array. So I know in our bootcamp we work with these here. So what I'll do is I'll go over and look for our code in here, and then we'll just borrow it, and that'll make our lives like 1,000 times easier. So I'm gonna go over to week X, and I'm gonna go here, and I know that we have some queries. So if I go into our backend application here, and I go into our DB directory, and I go into the SQL directory, and I go into any of these. I think I wrote it in there's a file in here for the database because we wrote our own adapter, and in somewhere in here I use the JSON commands. Array to JSON, self-wrap array. And so what I'm looking for is this. Yeah, this is what I'm looking for. So we have row to JSON, array, aggregate, and then array to JSON. If that looks like a lot, I know, but that's what it is. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it. And so I'll go back over to here. I'll paste it in. And so this is where we want our template to be. So I'll go ahead and cut this out here and paste it in. And then I'll grab this as such. I'll get rid of this. I don't need that anymore. And we'll try this out. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and stop our server. I'll start it again. And I'm going to go over to here, refresh this. I guess we could have tested it first. We probably should have done that first, to be honest. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, as we could go ahead down below here and test it. And I think there's something missing. So we have this one. Maybe it's just an extra one that's missing here. So we have... Oh, you know what? I missed this part here. That's probably why. So we'll go ahead and paste this in again. Sorry. And we'll copy this down below. And if it works down here, then it'll work everywhere, right? It's trying to... There we go. We'll have to hit enter again. And so now I think it's working. Yep. It doesn't look pretty, but it definitely is working. I think it's because I have X on, so I'll just say X off. And then I'll just paste that in again. It's probably working. So let's go over to here and stop our app, and we'll start it back up again. And then we'll take a look at that data. I mean, it pasted, so I'm not exactly sure why it's not working. I'll take out rows here. I'll just see what happens if we do that. Maybe it doesn't like that. We'll hit enter. Refresh. It doesn't say what its problem is. I would love to know why. I'm going to do a console log here. If there's any errors, we can just do this console log ERR. That might be a little bit better to find out what's going on with our database. We'll go back here, refresh. And it has a problem. Unknown as, oh, you know what? There's a semicolon here. That's the problem. Okay, great. So we'll go back and hit up. We'll go over to here, refresh. Now we have our endpoint. I want to see if it actually is in the structure that I want it to be. Usually when I click this, it would show me the payload. I didn't want to double click it. There we go. And so we have questions index 0. So I only want the first one because we're actually not returning multiple rows. It's always going to be one row. So we can go back over to here and change this out to 0. I'm not sure if it's calling this row questions, but I can just clear this out again. We'll go back and hit up. I'm going to go back over to here, give this a refresh. And if we look at our payload, we have questions and questions index. So that's our format, which is nice. So now the next thing is that we need to do this SQL statement. And what I want for this is I want this to check if there's any, like look for any answers. And if we already have a UID for it, then do not return that as the next one. So what I'll do here is we'll say select. Actually, before we move on, I just want to explain what's going on here. Because you might say, Andrew, what's all this darn code that we have here? Well, if we look up each function, we can see what these do. So we have row to JSON. So returns the row of a JSON object. So if you give it data, it'll return the row. And then inside of that, we have aggregate array. So that just takes them and puts them all together as an array, and then you have to turn the array into JSON. And then coalesce says, if this value is null, then return an empty array. Okay, so that's what it's doing. So hopefully that is very clear. Then we have array a row. So the idea is that this data is mapped over to there. So the idea is that our query goes here, then goes into there, and then return as questions. Hopefully that was clear. But yeah, learning SQL is fun. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and make a new subquery here. And this one is going to be select all from answers. And by the way, I always spell answers wrong. So I'm going to go double head and take a look here. Is that how you spell answers? That looks wrong to me. It is. You know what's funny? On my homepage, ExamPro, my wife complains about this all the time. She's like, you have answer spelled wrong. It's spelled wrong here. Why don't you fix it? It's been years. I'll fix it tomorrow, okay? I promise. And you know what's the funny part? I'm not the one who wrote that there. So it's not even my mistake. But anyway, so I'll swap that out. But that means we're going to have to recreate this table. I'm going to go over here and just go ahead and paste it in. And so now we've created the table here. So what we'll do here is just make sure answers is spelled wrong so people that are watching aren't getting frustrated. And what I want to do is I want to return a question UUID, but I want to say where it's not in answers. So select from where questions UUID not in, and then we will say select question UUID from answers. And then the idea is we'll just say limit one because we only need one of those records back. And then the idea there is that that should work. Now, whether this will work with not in, I'm not sure because it depends if this is an array or not. So we might have to switch that to any, but we'll see here in a moment. So actually, we can just query this to find out if we go down below here. It might be easier than starting our server constantly. And we don't need a semicolon there. That's actually just going to mess things up. We'll go ahead and copy this here. Paste it in again, hit enter. And it looks like it is possibly working. I can't tell because this one's so large. It didn't error out, but I'll stop this. And we'll give this a refresh. And it is returning one. So that means that's the question that we want to load. Notice that our questions, we have the UIDs there, so we'd have to iterate through them, which is totally fine. You could return them in another structure, so you could just reference them directly, but I'm not going to do that. So now that we know we have our questions ID and things like that, we can go ahead and update our code here to then just return that record. So the idea is that on initialization, it's going to do this questions fetch. But the trick here is that we want to load a very specific question here. And we have a thing for choices, but we don't have a thing for question. So what I'm going to do is go here. We'll type in question, and we'll make a new component. So I'm just going up here to reference this component because I really don't remember how to do this from scratch. But every component has a view. So say view, function, vnode, and we'll do this. And then the idea is that I want to go ahead and grab this stuff because that's actually the question, right? I know I can render a question by doing m question like this. And what I'll do here is then go from here. Actually, our question is, I'm just trying to think about this here. You know, our question actually is here. I'll just change this to study sync. Study sync here. And so this is where we are rendering our question. Yeah, it's right here. And so I'll do this. And then our question is this contents right here. Question and choices. So go ahead and grab it there, and then we'll paste it into here as such. And my copy paste failed as per usual, so we'll go ahead and cut this out. We'll go over to here and paste it in as such. And so we have our question up here. I'm going to make a wrapper because I don't have that on this, but we'll just say question wrapper. And then the idea is that everything inside of this is going to be the question. And so we'll just grab this as such. I think that's fine. And so now we can render the question here. It's a little bit cleaner. I want to make sure we didn't break anything, so we're going to stop this, start this, and we'll refresh this. And still has an issue with data, because that's what we're trying to fix, is this data issue. So the idea is that we need to dynamically grab what question it is that we're on. So what I'm thinking here is we can go up to our data, and maybe we'll just say current question, and we'll make this a function. And what I'm thinking here is we'll go, because we need to loop through the questions and find it. So we have questions here. So we have data questions list, and then I want to iterate through that. So we'll say I, it says always var I equals 0, semicolon, and then it's, I used to have this memorized, but it's I less than the list length. Okay, and then we have I plus plus. So let me just read this for a second. It's very important that you know your for loops. So we say, as long as I is less than the length, then add to it. And so I think that should work. And what I'm trying to do is find the current question. So we'll just say var question here to indicate the question that we want to find here. I'm going to say null. And I'm not sure why it's having a problem there with that. Why is that a problem? Expected semicolon. Oh, sorry. This kind of looks funny to me for some reason. Why is that a problem? Oh, function spelled wrong. That's why. Okay, great. So the idea is that we're going to iterate through it, and then we're going to say data question index. And the idea is that if this equals data questions list I UID, if those are the same, then that means that we found it. When we're using regular JavaScript, we always use triples. There's a reason for that. I'm not going to get into it. And so the idea is that if these are the equivalent, then we're going to assign it here. Now, I'm not sure why this is complaining about the if. Expression expected is just because I don't have anything inside of it. The expression's right here, buddy. What's your problem? Well, I'll put something on the interior here. And so we'll say question equals this, if this is the case. All right. Why does it have a problem with this? Expression expected. What is it? What does it want? I know how to write if statements. Doubles, curlies, for loop. Is it because I put triples? No. Okay, I suppose we could ask what the problem. Okay, if I take this out here, one second. If I take this out, does that fix it? Yeah, that's fine. I put that in there. Now that's a problem. Oh, you know what it is? This is supposed to have curlies. That's why. There we go. Okay, great. And I think we can like break this if we do that, or yeah, that would break us out of the for loop. And so the idea is that now we should have our questions assigned. So we'll just say current question, and we'll say question. And so the idea is that we want to return that. Okay, and so that's how we're going to get our question. So now what I can do is I can just say data current question. And, you know, it's not the most efficient way, but it will work. This is a small app, so it's not a big deal. We're using JavaScript. But then we can go here and say question. Right? So I'm hoping that that's going to work for us here. We're going to stop this, start this, the server. We'll go back over to here, give this a refresh. We'll go and take a look down below. Current question is null. So that's making me think that the question UID is not set when it gets to here. So what I'll do is I'll do console log. And I'll say data question index. And then I'll say data questions list. But you think that it would be there before it renders, eh? And I'll just put in front of this QQ so we can see what we're looking at. And I'll stop this, start this. We'll go back over to here, refresh, and we'll go up. And we have QQ, null, and array. So probably the first time this renders, it hasn't actually pulled the data yet, so that's totally fine. The one thing that I'm surprised is that we don't have to do like a redraw on this. Normally in Mithril, you'd have to call like a redraw. But it doesn't show us having to do that, so maybe it automatically does a redraw on that. So I think we have to handle the case where there isn't anything set. So if that's the case, what I'll do here is I'll just make an if statement here and just say if data question, current question. We'll just say if question ID UID is equals or does not equal null, then we'll do this. Okay, because that's probably what's giving us problems here. I could also make this a little bit nicer if I go like this and just say return false. And maybe that will be a bit better for us. We'll give this a stop and a start. And we'll go back over to our application. I'm going to just close out some of these tabs just so we can see what we're doing here a bit better. But we're getting pretty close to getting this app working. Much better than the last time I did this in terms of functionality. But, I mean, it's not complaining, but notice that it's not calling anything. So it's making me think that this on init is not being called. So if we go down to or up to our app, wherever it is here, we have this on init, data questions fetch. And then if I go over here, well, it must be working because we saw our data being called, right? So if I go console log here, let's say console log. Well, I don't even need to do that because we know it's being called. Well, hold on. We'll just do this here. So say well, this says, no, okay, hold on here. We'll say D data. And so we'll see if this function is actually being called here. And it is. So I'm thinking what's happening here is maybe it's not calling a redraw. So I'm going to just type in redraw here, redraw. False, I think it is. And it's a Mithril thing, so we'll just give it an M, and maybe that will resolve it. So I'm not sure. Redraw. Refresh this here. Okay, so I mean, it seems like those are getting set because we have a list here. And we have question index. Did I spell something wrong, maybe? Current question, questions. Oh, well, you know what? This one is supposed to be current questions. So at least that's wrong. We know that's wrong. And so maybe we don't need the redraw in here. And it's just that I set the question in it. Maybe I just set this wrong here. Okay, we'll try this again. We'll save that. We'll go back over to here, give this a refresh. And I mean, the data is still showing up here, but what I want to see is if I go down here and we say D data current question, and we'll refresh this again. So this is returning a current question, so that is good. And you know, this isn't UID, this is just index. I called it the wrong thing. So all my mistakes has just been me typing things wrong. So go back over to here, we'll give this a refresh. And it says, cannot read properties of null question in the app. So it has a problem here for question. The question is, what is it returning here? I'm not even sure. So if we go back over to our data up here, go to our network tab and click into here. Not sure why it's calling twice. It really shouldn't be calling twice. But if we go into here, this is call question, so that should work. And if I go back over to this question, paste. I mean, that seems like that would be correct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this line here. And if this works, we'll just console log this out. And then that way we'll be able to see what it's actually returning. Because maybe it's not returning what we think it's returning. And it's actually returning null. So I think a better measure of this would be to go here and say data current question and check it this way. Because then if it actually is set, then we can utilize it. And we're kind of getting a lot of noise here, so I can't really see what I'm doing. So up here, we can see that it's iterating through this. So we are getting the QQ here, and then it's null, QQ here, null. Then notice here it actually gets set, and then it actually shows it down here below. So eventually it does actually find the question, current question, and it has question here. So then the question is, why is it not rendering out here then? So I'll go back over to here. And what I want to do is just delete out some of these so that we can see what we're doing. That's on submits. That one's fine. And I'll go back here, give this a refresh. But notice that when we utilize it, let's go back over here for a second. Data.current question, right? And then, oh, we don't have the console log in here anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and go here and say console log, and then do this, and then a console log, and then do question. And then we'll say here 1, 2. Okay, save that, stop that, start that. We'll go back over to here to our actual application, refresh. We have 1 null. So it's nulling out, which is confusing because clearly it is running this command and getting it, unless we're calling this somewhere else, which we're not. So console log Q question. We'll try this again here like this. So it's going Q null, 1 null, Q null. And then down below here, it actually gets set. Q, then 1. But how can it call 1 if it's null up here? And then it's null down here? Good question, good question. I mean, this looks like it's hugging really close. I'm not sure if that's a problem. Stop this, start this again. So let me go figure it out. I'm not going to waste your time, okay? Hold on. Let me just think about it. Is this our problem? Because before I was going to wrap this entire thing, but now I'm putting here. But it's saying if the data question is not null, then return false. But it actually is null. And so in this case, we want to return false. And that's probably our problem. So we give this a refresh. And notice that now this is showing up much better. So all our Q's and 1s are totally fine. And so now the question is like, why is it not showing the rendered question here? So I'll give this another refresh here. Oh, well, I mean, it's console logging it out here. So now my next question is, why do I not see it here? And you know what I think it is? I think it's because we have, well, this is an array, so this actually should render out fine. But is it only rendering the last element? Sometimes this happens. So I'm going to just go ahead and take this out of here for just a second. I don't see anything. I'm going to go ahead and inspect the element. Sometimes it's there and we just can't see it. And I'll drag this over here. And we have nothing in there. Okay. So we're definitely getting our data now. But like, why won't it print here? I'm going to go ahead and just take this out for 2 seconds, like this. And just say hello, or just put anything here. Because nothing's rendering. So I think the data is there, and it has something to do with the way we are having the data in line. But you know what? Here I don't use square braces. So I think maybe I don't have to make an array. That's probably my problem. It's probably just a syntax here. We'll go back here, give this a refresh. I still don't see anything. So it makes me think that this is still returning false. Console log. We could also do this as well. So we'll just say if it's that. But clearly it must be rendering this because it's showing this one. You know what it is? I think it's going to need a return on this. The reason why I'm so confused is because normally when I write this, I write it in CoffeeScript. And CoffeeScript, it's like Ruby. You don't have to write returns. And I think that's what's tripping me up here. So it's totally just a syntax error because I'm not paying attention. So I'm going to go ahead and try this again. I bet it's going to work now. There we go. Okay, great. And so now what we'll do, we'll say data, current, question, question here. And so that's going to now bring us this up here. And so the next thing I need to do is fix this choice, because we have another component up here called choice. And we need it to actually show the current choice. So here we'll say data, current, question, and we have choices, which is fine. But the way this thing works, we have 0, 1, 2, 3, but they actually call theirs A, B, C, D. I don't really like that, but that's how they do it. So if we go over to our questions here, and just take a look at it. We'll go back over to here. Yeah, we have option A, B, C, D. So what I'm trying to think about this here is like, okay, I mean, we could just change this to A, B, C, D. Yeah, we'll just do that, I guess. We'll say A, B, C, D. And then we have our index as N. And so in here, it's not choices, it's just right on the question, and it's called option. So then I'm going to call this option here. I'm going to wrap this in square braces, because we're going to have to interpolate it. And just because I'm not confident that this is using we can do backticks, I'm going to do it the old style way here, which is this way. And so this should actually show our choice, assuming I typed that right. Did I put an underscore? I did, yes. Data is not defined, so there's some kind of thing called data somewhere here, up here. And this is determining whether it's selected or not. I'll just say data here. Data. I'll go up here, I'll make a new thing just called selected, and we'll just say null, comma. Yeah, that seems fine to me. We'll give this a refresh. And so now we have our choices. And so as we select them, it's going to select other ones here. That's really good. One thing we'll have to do is after we submit a choice, we'll have to clear out the submit. So if we go down below to our submit function here, after it's successful, you can say data selected, and we'll just say null. The thing is that it would have to select the next question. So technically after our submission, our data would do the same thing as our on init, and it would probably bring back the questions, or at the very least it would tell us the next question index. So I'm going to go over here and grab the question index and go down below, and I'm going to paste that into this here as well. And so the idea is that that would set that there. Okay, so we are getting really close to getting this functional. The only few other things we have to do is I have to now have a submit and record that record. So we'll go over to our backend here. And what we'll do here is we will go down our submit. And so what we want to do is we want to execute a submission. I mean, this is selecting, this is for query, but a lot of times for Postgres libraries, they'll have like their own execution statements. So I'll just say Node.js again. So I have a feeling there's probably like a separate one like called execute. So we have query, yeah, we have query. So do we have client? Here's client. And so what I'm looking for here is execute. I'm not seeing one. So could there be another one? That's all there is. So I'm going to take a stab at it. I'm going to just use query. Maybe for their framework, they just have a generic, but most other Postgres drivers, they'll have a query and they'll have an execute. They'll be actually separate. So I need a bit more room here. I'm going to close out this one. We want our backend here. And in our submit statement, we're going to want something very similar. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. Whoops. We'll copy this. And I'm going to go ahead and paste this in here as such. I'm going to grab the whole thing. This thing's being silly. It's not really listening to me. I'm going to go ahead and copy this. I was going to paste it line by line, but I don't want to have a nightmare on my hands here. So I'll go ahead and do this. And failed to record answer. And so what I want to do here is I want to insert into answers, say public here. I always kind of forget how to write these, but we have a seed file that shows us. So into, yeah. And then it's our options. So I know we have question UUID, and then it was the choice, which was what? What did we call that in our schema? That was called, yeah, it was just literally called choice. So if we go back here, we will say choice. And yeah, values here. And so then we want to insert those. So there's probably a way for us to like insert these. I don't know if it's like this, but normally a language will have a way for you to insert them. So I'm not sure. I'm going to go ask ChatGPT. So let's say using the Node.js PG library, show me how to insert into a table called answers a UUID and for question UUID and a single character for choice. Give me the JS code. And let's see if it can solve that for us because I don't want to goof around here all day. All right, so it is what I thought. We'd use the dollar signs, and then the second value is the values here, and that's actually how we would do it. Interesting. So again, assuming that ChatGPT gave us the correct code. But if we go back over to here, we don't actually need to return anything. So see here, they're not actually necessarily returning anything. So I'm going to get rid of, well, we do want to return some JSON, but for our query, I'm going to just change this here. So this is our query here, which is fine. Just going to go insert into public. That, yeah. And so we'll have a comma here. And so the idea is that we want our question UUID, and then we want our choice supplied here. We need to get the actual values from here. So in our request, we should have a body just like the other one. So up in our, where was this? We had this somewhere here. Maybe it was right in here that we had it. Body. I think this actually already is decoded. So I think this actually already is what we think it is. So if I go request.body, I'm wondering if we can just do UUID here. So let's say question UUID and then choice. Okay, so say var question UUID, var choice. And so those are two that we can pass into there. That's good. I'm going to take that out of here. Technically, I do want to return back data, but not from this query here. What I want to do is, if this is successful, then I want to do a separate query, which is just going to get the question UUID. So I would think that if there was an error, it would fail out to here. So what I can do is, I'm going to just indent this. I'm going to go ahead and make another query. We'll just say data, because all I want to return here is the question UUID for the next one. And so what I can do is just grab this statement here, and we'll go down below, and then I'll just paste it into here as such. And I think maybe it wants that on the end there. And so it looks a little bit mucked up. Oh, you know what it is? It's this darn line. Okay, there we go. And so in theory, that should return back what we actually want. This is complaining about having to wait. I think we have to have an async up here. Async. There we go. And then the idea is that it will return back this, which is what we want in our data, right? Because we already coded that in for our stuff. So that makes sense. Yep. So now I guess the question is, does it work? So let's go here and stop our application. And we'll start it back up. We'll give this a refresh here. And we have data here. Well, you know what? I don't think I updated the JavaScript to pass the correct stuff along here. So let's go take a look here and go back to our app.js. And so we have options here. It says click end, and that would actually be its choice. The only thing is that when it actually sends back here to our submit, wherever our submit is, our submit's right here on our application, we want to submit what's selected. So we go data, and this would actually be choice. And then we want the question UUID, which is actually just our data question index, like this. Okay. Which is fine. Yeah, selected is fine. This has to be uppercased. So say to uppercase JS. I actually forgot how to do that. I think it's just to uppercase. Yeah, it is to uppercase. That's what it is. So we'll go ahead and copy this. We'll go back over to here. I'll paste it in as such. We'll do that. And so now it'll be formatted in the way that it needs to be formatted. We could even do it over here just in case, so that we are really making sure we're getting something that is to uppercase and we're not having a problem here. But I think that is fine. It'd be nice to know if this is working correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and just do rec body. And then down below here, I'll just do this R1, R2, R1, R2. And this will be our question UID. And then this one will be our choice. And so then we'll know if this is working correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and restart our application. We'll give this a refresh. I'm going to go ahead, try our submit. We get a 404, which is totally fine. This is trying to do a put. This is set to put. This is on submit. So I'm not exactly sure why this is failing. I think before it was working, but our app is not running. So that's probably the problem, is that we ran into an issue with our app when it tried to start up, or it ran into an issue and it just quit out. It did. It's saying this callback is not a function. So that is on line where? So it's an issue with query.js. So it's something with our query we just wrote. And maybe it's because we're doing this one and this one can't actually return a result. So what I'll do is I'll take this out of here. This callback is not a function. I don't see why that would be an issue. Let's go and take a look at what ChatGPT did again. But it's not returning any kind of variable here. But I don't see why that would matter. Even if there was nothing, it should still work, right? But we'll try it again. Maybe that's our issue. We'll submit again. It's doing a put. We're getting a 404. This .callback error. It'd be really nice if it told me exactly where my problem is. But notice up here that this is outputting, so this stuff is working as expected. And yeah, so let me go figure this out, okay? You know what I think it is? I think it's because this is an array and we did not place it in as an array. That's my guess. So I think that it just wants this. And maybe that would resolve it. Because maybe it's thinking the third one is a callback when it's not. So we'll try this again. We'll refresh. And we'll hit enter. Now we get a 500. That's better. That means it's going to the correct place. We'll go take a look here. It has a syntax error on line 59. So on line 59, there is a syntax error. I am not seeing a syntax error. But if it says there is one, there must be one. Maybe it's in our statement here. Public answers, questions, comma. There's not supposed to be a comma here. That's probably what it was. So I'm going to stop this, try this again. We'll go over here. We'll hit submit. And now we get a 200 back. And I want to see, I'm going to try that does this sometimes. Sometimes I want to see the data. There we go. And so it brings back the next question UID, which would allow us to get the next one. So I wasn't paying attention here, but if we submit this, does it get the next one? It does. Excellent. If we refresh this, it is going to the next one in order. We don't order these in any particular way, so it's always going to just be randomized. So just understand that if you refresh this, all we know is it's just not going to answer one that we already have, right? So that is good. Eventually, we're going to run out of questions here. And so I think maybe what we need is we need some kind of thing that's showing us our progress, because otherwise we're going to have some problems. The other thing is that it would be nice to know if we could get our score as we're going along here. So we're almost done our application, but I'm going to go down here and I'm going to create another component. And I'm not going to make it a bar. I'm going to just make it very simple. So down below here, we have our article. And I'm going to go M. And we'll just say, we'll make a new div here. And this will be progress. And so we'll say M here. I'm just going to copy this line here. We'll say total questions. Then we'll have total answered. And then we'll have score. And so those will be our 3 values that we'll have here. We'll just say data. We can get the total questions. We can just go questions list length here to get them. And then here we can have our data answers total. And then here we'll have data score. And so I'll go back up to the top of our JS application here. And yeah, over here, all the way to the top. And so we'll have answers total, and then we'll have score. And so those will be 2 values we'll have to have here. So I'll just say 0 and 0. This might show null initially, which is not a big deal. We'll give a refresh here. We'll see what we have. Uncaught number. So it has a problem here somewhere. It's up here. There's a colon missing. We'll go back over to here, give this a refresh. Unknown identifier here, M. It's because we're missing a comma here. There we go. We'll give this a refresh. Missing a closing parentheses. I mean, that one matches that one, so that shouldn't be a problem. These ones all match these ones, so what's our issue here? Sometimes I align my code so I can just see if there's any problems. Sometimes you don't notice those patterns. Oh, you know what? The commas are missing here. And you might ask, like, why don't you just write HTML? Because Mithril uses the syntax, and that's what makes it super highly efficient. But here we go. Notice we have our numbers down below here. I'm just going to go ahead and make some CSS adjustments. So down below, we'll just say progress. And I'm just going to go ahead and take a look here. I'm going to give it the same styling as our article. So I'm going to go here and just say .progress. And that'll just save us some time for styling. Still not doing it. Oh, I guess I have to spell it right for it to work. We'll try that again. Refresh. There we go. One thing I want to do is just give progress a little bit of margin on its top here. So we'll just say margin top 24 pixels. And we'll refresh this. There we go. And so this just needs to be a little bit more human readable. So if we have our score, I'm thinking about this for a second. I wouldn't mind if these were all inline. So I'm going to go here and just say div. Display flex like that. I think by default it should go horizontally, maybe not. We'll say flex direction row. It is not it's not being responsive to that. I'm not exactly sure why. We actually don't have to put div there. We just do dot. That's the same thing as div. Try this again here, refresh. Do we have caching on? No, we don't. So I'm going to go ahead and inspect this for 2 seconds. Oh, you know what? It's not on the actual, it's supposed to be up here. Sorry. There we go. That would resolve that issue. We're not using anything here. We'll just take that out for now. I'll refresh this. And so now it's starting to look like something. I'm going to go ahead and just say something like total. So the question is like questions out of answered. So this would be, so the score would be Here, this would be score. And I'm going to try interpolation. It might actually work. I don't know. Maybe it'll work. And so I'll do this. So this will be score. And then we'll say data, questions, list length. And we'll say this here like that. And I mean, these are basically the same thing. So total. And I'll just go ahead and delete this part out and bring this down. We'll put a comma back here and a parentheses. And this will be total. And so I'm hoping that this works in the browser. I just always assume, because my knowledge is so old from like a billion years ago, that I just keep trying to do the older things. But it actually worked fine. And so we have our total and our score. We're going to need some padding between those because it's going to kind of get hard to read there. So let's just say flex gap. I thought it was, or just maybe gap, 24 pixels. There we go. And so we have our total questions and then our score. It looks a little bit confusing. So we'll just say here, we want this the other way around. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this here. And then we'll go after this and paste it in here. And we'll go back and give this a refresh. And so now we have total and score. And the idea is that we are on a very particular type of question. It would be good to know which question we're on. I mean, there are 20 questions. We don't start at 1. So technically, we'll have to do a +1 on this. And so now we're on like the current question. And so I'll go up here to the, where is it? To the actual question. And I'm going to just make one minor change. So over here we have, where is it? Yeah, question. And so right here I want to do interpolation again. So I'll just do backticks. And we'll do this. And we'll say data, answers, total, +1. And then that way we know, okay, we're on question 1. We're a total of 1 of 1. Yeah, we could make this a progress bar. I'm not going to do that. And then we can see our score. So we need to get those numbers because right now, you know, we don't know what we're on or the numbers that we have here. So I'm going to go, I want to get selected and answers total and score is what we want to get set. And so in here we have two functions here. Yeah. So say data, answers totaled equals data answers totaled. And then we have data score. Score and score. So we have those two here. I'm going to go ahead and copy these two. And so this is for the fetch. And we'll go down below here to our other area where we set it. And then it'll be here as well. So it's on our submit and our get. So now we'll have to go back over to our code. And this is basically the last of it. And then we're free to actually do some Elastic Beanstalk. But again, I don't feel bad showing all this because there are exams like the developer associate. Even if you're not doing that one, you have to know how to do basic stuff. You need to know how to write SQL. You need to know how to write basic code and do front ends. And this is not even complex. This is very simplistic. So if you don't have these skills, you're picking them up now, and it's extremely useful. But I want to go back into the back end here, and we want the answers totaled. So if we go to our queries, we only have two here. I'm going to make a very similar query. I'm going to copy this one like this. And this one's going to be answers total. And this is going to be a count. So counts are not very efficient, but for this app, it's totally fine. I'll just put true here. And the idea is that we want to figure out how many answers we have. So I'm just going to take that out as such. And that actually should be that. We can even simplify this and make it one line, which I think I would prefer. There we go. The next one's a bit harder because we need to tally our score. To tally our score, we need to know which questions we got right. But first I'll get this one in place. I'm going to go ahead and grab this, copy, and I'll paste this into our other query down below here. Yep, here. And so I'm just starting to think about, okay, how do we tally our score? So we have answers, and each answer has to correlate with a question's choice. The other thing that we could do is we could just make it so that at the time that we mark it, that we mark whether it was correct or not. And that actually would make more sense to do, because if we did that, then if we change any of our data, then our data would historically be correct, whether we change our questions data. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to go ahead and just say is correct here, and we'll make this a Boolean. Can we do that? Bool, not null. Boolean. There we go. Is correct. And I'm going to have to drop our data here. So I'm going to go over to here, and I'm going to say, I guess I'm still logged into the server. You could just quit that and get back in there. I'm going to say truncate answers, and that will drop that entire table. So now all the data is out of it. Not drop. Drop would be to delete the table, but that'll get rid of all the data in there. So now what I want to do is I want to determine whether something's correct or not. So if we go over to our index.js, into our submit, before we submit the answer, we need to make sure that that answer is correct. And we'll actually have to write another query, because we need to find out what our choices are. So in here, I want to, I'll just copy this one because this one's fine here. And I'm going to go up here for a second, and we'll paste this in. And so now what I'm doing is just saying select correct. What is it in our thing? If we go back to our schema, it's called correct answer. So we'll go here and we'll say select correct answer from questions, public questions. I just prefer to do that, where UUID equals $1. So that is our query. We need to pass it a second parameter here. So this will be square, and this will be question UUID. Okay. And then the idea is that we're going to find out what that data is. So the data here would be rows 0. And the idea is that we want to know if this is true or not. So I'm going to console log this out. Like that. Because we have to insert in here whether the choice is correct. So we'll say is correct. And then I'll just put $3. And we're going to fake it for now because we really don't know. Because we'd have to take this data. We'd have to say data rows 0. And we're going to assume that all it returns back is that one record. And then we have to determine if this is equal to our choice. Right? Because if it is, then that's going to set our is correct value here. Like that. Or var, sorry, var. Probably use const. I'm going to use const. And so the idea is that if this is correct, then we can pass it down here. But I expect this to error out, okay? So what we'll do is we will quit out of this. Another thing I'd like to do is I'd like to fix our questions, because right now we're using a wildcard, and we don't really want to select all of our data. We only want to select what they want to see. Otherwise, they'll know what the answer is because they can just inspect the code in here. So in here, we want to be very explicit in terms of what we're grabbing. So here I'm going to say public, or sorry, I was going to say questions, question, questions, option A, option B, option C, option D, and then the only other thing we need here is the UID. You really shouldn't use the wildcard. You should always be very explicit of what you're setting. But anyway, so now let's go ahead and stop our server. I mean, it'd be nice if it just worked the first time, but I really don't think it's going to. We'll give this a refresh here. And so now we can see 0120, which is not exactly what I want. It looks like it's adding 0 to 1. So I think what's happening here in our JavaScript is that it's interpreting one of the values as a string as opposed to an int. So if we go down below here to wherever it is, so your questions. Oh, it's in our app.js here, sorry. So I think when we set, when we bring in our thing, we'll just make sure that it is actually the total here. So I'll just say parse int, and that will just give it a guarantee that it'll be what we think it's supposed to be. Same thing with score. It should be parse int, because this should be a number. And that will give us a guarantee that it's not just appending it like a weirdo. Same here. Let's just say, whoops, parse int. Parse int. Normally, like if you sent data from the back end to the front end, it would translate it over to a number, but I don't know if Express.js is that smart that it could do that. So if I go into here, notice that it's parsing it as a string and not a number. And so I don't know how to fix that in Express.js. I'm not going to try. I'm just going to refresh this, and then we'll just do that. Notice that we're getting a non. So if we go back over to here, answers total is 0. So that should get parsed as an int. So I'm not sure what it's complaining about. And answers total. So if we go back over to here, I'm just going to copy it, making sure that I'm getting it correct. So we have answers total, answers total. That is on the get here. And then on our submit, wherever submit is, I don't think that's the problem. And then down below here it's saying not a number for this one, which is silly. Well, actually, that's for our score. Our score is having that problem. So it's saying score is null. Because we try to set it here and there's no number. So actually that's fine. So this is working correctly now. And now we're just focused on the score. Now, if we don't have a score, then it would be 0. And here we should return a score. So to do that, we'll go again and we'll go do this and we'll say score. And we'll select all and we're going to count the ones. So we'll just say sum where is correct. And that should get us our score. So we'll copy that one and then I'll go down to our other one here. We'll paste it in there. We'll give this a refresh. And I mean, we should be getting a number for our score now, but we're not actually returning score. You know what? It's because we have to stop and start our server again. We'll refresh this. Now we have a 500 error. That's great. What's our problem here? And it is correct does not exist. And that's true because our table, we changed it and we did not necessarily add that there. If we go back to our schema here, we added is correct here. Create table. There's a way of like we could say like create the table, and if it already exists, if not, like we could tell it to force drop it. So we'll say create table PSQL because there is some statement that we can utilize to force it to drop. We'll go to the PostgreSQL here. Drop table if it already exists is what we want. And I guess it's just that statement here. And so this would be answers. And we could do that for both of these here, by the way. So if like we ran this multiple times, it would always drop our tables. But I guess we could just drop this. Oops, I'll stop that. We'll go down here. Yeah, this is where our Postgres connection was. So I'll go here and I want to drop our answers. And then I'm going to go ahead and create this again. There we go. And now we're in good shape. We'll quit this. We'll go back up to here. I'm going to go ahead to our server. We'll start up our server again. And we'll go back over to study sync. We'll refresh this. And we still have a problem. What's the problem now? I know it's almost 2 hours in here, but we're almost done. No function matches the given name or argument types. You must need to explicitly typecast. So it's saying something's wrong. It might have a problem with the sum command, which doesn't make any sense because it definitely is a command that's there. It's either that or I'm spelling answers wrong. So say public answers. public answers. Is it telling us where the problem is? That'd be very useful. Position 28. So if we go here and we say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14. Nope, that's not enough to see a problem. So what we could do is we go over here and just connect to our script and we'll just run it manually. That always fixes that problem there. Like to debug it where our problem is. It says sum. So no function matches the given name or argument. Really? Sum? There's no sum? Okay. Count all that are true. I guess it's not summing a number. So actually that kind of makes sense. You know what? I think that it actually is just count, because if it's true, then it will work. And if it's false, then it won't be there. So I think that's actually what it is. And I was using sum for some weird reason. And so now we can see we have a score here and the value is showing up properly, but we are having a problem. It's still returning a 500 error, so it's not necessarily working. I'm going to go back over to here and stop this. I believe that this is the correct statement, but I don't think we did it in the right place. So if we go up to here, we have to do it in both places. We'll do that. And so now I think we have everything correct here. We'll give this a refresh. And so now it's showing things correctly. We haven't answered anything yet, so we don't know. What does AWS stand for? It stands for Amazon Web Services. So we hit next, and now we're on question 2, and our score is 1. Which AWS service is used for object storage? That would be S3, but I'm going to choose RDS. And it says our score is 2, which is not true. We did not get 2. So that's where we have a problem. So our score is not counting correctly. I'm going to just say aggregate functions. Well, first of all, is it setting our thing true, or did we hard code that? So if we go over to our choices in our index.js here, we say submit, and we actually try to check to see if it's so it says correct answer is B, correct answer is C, but we didn't check if this was actually getting set correctly because it is passing it along. So what I'll do here is I'll just go ahead and say console log is correct. Is correct. And so we'll just stop this and try this again. And so what I want to see, what happens if I choose the wrong one? It's obviously not machine learning. We'll go to the next one here. It says that it's false. So that makes me think that it's recording things properly. So I'm going to go ahead and select all from answers in our database here. And we see false, 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 which is not true because we actually got some correct. And that makes me think that this comparison's not working correctly. But we uppercase our choice, and our row is the same thing here. So what I'm going to do here is say data.rows 0. And then we'll say choice. Because we got to make sure our data is first correct. And so which service is a managed NoSQL database? That would be DynamoDB. We'll submit that. I'll go back over to here. And we'll go back to our answers. We didn't restart the app, so now we don't know. So we'll try this again. We'll refresh. Which does RDS stand for? We'll say RDS. We'll go back over to here. And it doesn't like... What doesn't it like? Oh, it's supposed to be data.rows. Freaking jeez. Don't worry, we got lots of questions to get this right on here. And so we'll try this again. What does Amazon RDS stand for? Relational database. Yep. We'll click that. And it says correct answer is A. Oh, you know what? It's selecting it from that. So what we have to do is go here and say correct answer, like that. And so now I bet it will work properly. So we'll go ahead and refresh this here. Which service virtual networking? Probably VPC here. And now it's saying A, and true. So it should be recording true. And so now we have a true record. So technically we have one correct, but our score is not 6. So again, that has to do with how our aggregate's working. So I'm going to go aggregate functions PSQL. And so what I'm looking for, because we have min, max, sum, count, the number of inputted rows, which is fine. Another thing that we could do, this will just make it easier, now that I'm thinking about it, is we'll go back and we'll say true, and we'll just say where is correct is true. Okay, so that would be how we would do that. Hold on here. I might have got the parentheses wrong here. That's supposed to be like this. And so that's actually what we want to do. This is what happens when you're not writing SQL for a week or so. You start to forget it. Anyway, so we'll go back here and we will stop our application. We'll start it up again. We'll refresh it. And so now it's actually showing our score. So what is the main purpose of S3? And this will be for data storage. Which AWS service is used for content delivery? We will make the wrong choice. And well, actually, CloudFront is correct, so we'll do that, 3. Which is the model for AWS subscription? We'll just say freemium, which is wrong. And so it is now working expected correctly. We'll refresh this. The only thing this doesn't take care of is the fact that if we get to the end, it's going to error out on the last one, which is fine. But let's just make it convenient so that if we want to reset, we could always restart this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a new, this will be the last thing we do, I promise, is we'll make a new function here, and it'll be, it could be a put or a post, it doesn't really matter. It should be a post, so I'm going to make it a put because I just don't want to have to do a lot of work here. So I'm going to do a reset here. And what we'll do is we'll do a query. And all this is going to do is truncate the table. So we'll say truncate answers. And that way, if you ever want to restart, you can just restart this as much as you want. And that'll be easier for our testing purposes too. I'm not sure why this is all indented incorrectly. Just some of it, I guess. But we probably want to do this in a try as well, just because that's how things should be. So I'll go ahead and put our try here. Maybe this one's easier to grab. Yeah, this one's easier to grab. We'll grab this one. And we'll do this. We don't really need to return any JSON, but I guess what we could do is explicitly return some data. So I'm going to just say here, total answers 0, and this will be score 0. I think that's syntactically correct, because those are the two things that we're setting. And then the question UID is going to be the first one. So we still would have to query for the question UID after that. So I guess what we could do is go down here to our submit here, and I will have to grab, well, I guess we could just grab this and use that, because basically it's the same thing. So I'll just do that instead for our reset. And we'll do that. And this will just be, this doesn't have an execute, so we'll just take that out here like this, like that. And so I'm hoping that this reset will work well. It's complaining, this has a complaint here, so maybe we're missing something. This is also complaining here. It makes me think that we are missing a bracket. So we have our try. We have our catch down here. I mean, that looks correct to me. What's missing? Something's missing. It wouldn't complain for no reason. Stare, 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 stare. Keep staring. Let me pause. I'll go find it so you don't watch me look for 1,000 years. What it is, I can see there's this one. I think it's supposed to have one on the end here. Like this. There we go. Okay, great. And so I think that will resolve our problem here. I also need to update our application, and we just need a reset button. So I'm going to go all the way down here. After this, we'll just say M, reset, reset, like that. And I think we need an on click here. We do that on the on submit. So I'm just looking for the submit button, wherever that gets pressed. So we have submit here, and then this gets, oh, we just have it on like that. Okay, so I can say app reset. So I'll just say I guess I could just take this button and put it on the outside as well. That might look nicer. Just say button reset. This is button submit. I'll go down below here. This will be reset, reset, comma here. There we go. I'll go up to here. This function will look very similar, but we'll have reset, function, parentheses, curlies, comma, enter, and I'm going to grab this. It's going to look very similar. It's just to be reset. We don't have any body to pass, so we just do that, like that, and that should be fine. So I think that's good. We'll go ahead and try this now. You might say, Andrew, why are we putting all this extra little touches? It's just like, if you want this to work easily, then you should do it. So we'll hit reset, and I think that it reset it. Looks like it's fine. We'll try this again. We'll hit refresh, and there we go. So now we can go ahead and do our best. And if we don't want to do any more, we can just hit reset. I'm going to do one last thing. I'm just going to make that reset button nicer. And so if we look for our submit button up here. Sorry. I want to go ahead and just copy this code. Go all the way down the bottom. We'll do reset. Reset. I'm going to change this to another color. I think if I click into this, I can just change it to something else. Maybe like a light gray is fine, like this. And maybe like when it's clicked, it's a bit dark. Come on. Come on, you can do it. There we go. And we'll make it a little bit darker here. I want this to be gray. Why is it not going gray? There we go. There we go. And so we'll try this and refresh. It means button reset. Try this again. Button. Button. Button reset. Oh, I think it's just because it's that. Refresh again. I wouldn't mind if our button was aligned a bit nicer here. So I'll go into our app. I know it's finishing touches, but why don't we do a good job while we're here? And we'll go look for the reset here. There we go. We'll just say M reset wrapper. We'll bring that here. And I'll go here and just say reset wrapper. And I'll go, I know I spelled it wrong. I'll fix it here in a second. I'm looking for our article. I just want to grab these two lines. And we'll go back over to here. There we are. And we'll refresh this. And we'll just give it some margin top. And I feel like this is a little bit too big. I'm going to make this 14. And I'll just bring this down to 8. And I'll bring this down to 20. And I'll bring this down to 3. Refresh this. The reset wrapper should be working. Copy. Paste. I think we're missing a semicolon here. That's why it's not working. Still would like our margin top to work. I'm not sure why that is refusing to. Oh, you know why? It's because we have margin down there. Refresh this. And that's a little bit too much. It's a bit aggressive. And I'll put a little bit more on the top here. Refresh, refresh. And there we go. Okay, so now we have our beautiful reset button. Our code works in the background. Everything's amazing. And so basically now we have our app that is ready. We have to ignore the node files here. So in here, I'm just going to make a .getignore. And I'm going to go ahead and just say Node.js or a getignore. And I mean, I'll grab this one from Node. It's probably fine. And so now if I go back over to here, there we go. And we'll say app ready for EB. So in the next video, what we'll do is we'll actually set up our environment and then we will do a deploy and then we'll do different deploys. But yeah, hopefully that was worth it for you to make sure you have all those skills there, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, ciao.